Hey everyone, Nubkeks here, and in today's video we're taking a look at the Retribution Paladin on the Shadowlands beta for World of Warcraft. We will be taking a look at Holy Paladin and Protection Paladin over the next couple of days as well, so do stay tuned for those. And of course we've already taken a look at a couple of classes, and we'll be looking at all of the other specs and classes over the coming weeks as well. So lots of content, tons of content for Shadowlands coming up on the channel, so do stay tuned for all of that stuff. I hope that you'll enjoy it. Okay, so let's start by checking out all of the new abilities that are coming baseline for the Ret Paladin in Shadowlands. And we'll also check out the talent changes. Then we'll move on to like the new Shadowlands special stuff like Conduits, Legendaries, and Covenant abilities. There's quite a lot here baseline for Ret Paladin. We've got a lot of new tools to play with. One of the first big ones, of course, that you're going to see are the auras, okay? So we've got 4 different auras. You can have one of these up at all times. Crusader Aura is going to increase mounted speed by 20% for your party or raid. Devotion Aura is going to give 3% damage reduction to your party or raid. Concentration Aura will reduce interrupt and silence effects on your party or raid by 30%. And a Retribution Aura will give you Avenging Wrath for 12 seconds when any party or raid member dies. This is a controversial one. Let's touch on the other 3 first of all. Like Crusader Aura is pretty much designed for the start of Alterac Valley, you know. I guess it's kind of nice, but nothing too exciting there in terms of combat. Devotion Aura, though, is an absolutely massive deal. I'd say for any proper like raiding team is going to for sure want at least one paladin in their raid team at all times to provide Devotion Aura, right? Much like a mage providing Arcane Intellect. You know, maybe a bit of a downside for Ret Paladin is that Holy Paladin looks amazing. Protection Paladin's looking amazing as well. So you will have other paladins probably coming into those spots and possibly providing that aura, so you won't be as useful in that sense. But I guess on the other side, if a raid team is missing those particular roles, if they don't have people that play those specs, then you are going to be a very high priority to bring in that Devotion Aura. Also, again, in smaller groups like in Mythic Plus or in PvP, where again, those you know, compared to a raid where you've got loads of people, in Mythic Plus, this is a very, very nice piece of utility that you can bring to your party, because your party easily could not have a paladin apart from you. So that's really nice for Mythic Plus. Concentration Aura, again, also useful for Mythic Plus, right? That's more so, or PvP, even more so, is where you're going to see those effects. Perhaps there will be some fights where that's a thing, but generally speaking, I'd say it's a PvP thing. And then Retribution Aura is very, very controversial. Whenever a party or raid member dies, you gain Avenging Wrath for 12 seconds. The good part of this is that this is a reason to bring a Ret Paladin to progression, even if you do have, let's say, a Holy Paladin already bringing Devotion Aura. At least the Ret Paladins can go in with Retribution Aura on and feel kind of good about it, I suppose. The downside, of course, is that it's relying on party members dying. There's always the potential for a whole lot of cheese. Like, I mean, instantly I see this and you think about like a team of whatever, you know, 18 Paladins. And like 2 Resto Shaman, and the Resto Shaman with Ankh Totems and Reincarnation are going to just die a whole bunch of times on purpose, and you're going to get like a whole minute of Avenging Wrath uptime for free on your entire raid. Yeah, we'll see. This seems like it's designed for Rextroy in particular. So I don't know. Let me know what you think about Retribution Aura. For me, I think it's kind of questionable. Okay, next up we have a few baseline abilities coming in. This is really nice for Ret Paladin, where talents are now coming back baseline. The big one, of course, is Wake of Ashes. This is now a baseline ability for the Ret Paladin, which is phenomenal, because this is a super powerful ability, and it's super fun to cast it as well. One thing that has changed, I believe it does actually do more damage now. They upped the damage of this. It hits for 3,000 damage to all enemies in front of you, which is an awful lot. I mean, a Divine Storm in comparison is 1,300. Templar's Verdict is 1,800, so 3,000? Bam, it's a whole lot of damage. One thing to note is that this now only generates 3 holy power, down from 5. However, in my opinion, this is actually pretty good. It makes it a lot easier. It's one thing that I found playing Ret Paladin, was that it could feel a little bit bad when Wake of Ashes generated 5 holy power, because you really wanted to use this as much as possible, like as close to a cooldown as possible. So it felt a little bit bad when you ended up in those situations where pretty much your things were on CD, but you already had 1 holy power. And you're kind of going, man, I already have 1 holy power, so the 5 is going to overcap, and that feels a little bit bad. Very, very easy to never overcap really with 3 holy power. Just use Divine Storm and then or Templar's Verdict, and then Wake of Ashes, and you're good. So I like this change personally. Another couple of changes. Okay, Consecration is now a baseline ability as well, for all Paladin specs, in fact. Consecration. Very low damage, mind you. It's a 9-second cooldown now as well. Consecrate the land beneath you, doing 400 damage over 12 seconds to enemies in the area. You can only have one active. So the damage on this is minuscule. This is really a filler ability for the most part for the Ret Paladin, I think. But at least it's there, so take that as you will. Maybe they'll up it and we'll do actually meaningful damage. We'll see. Another big one, which is actually really nice, is Hammer of Wrath, which was formerly a talent, is now a baseline for, again, all Paladin specs, in fact, not just Ret. But this is very welcome for Ret. At this point, with this amount of haste, 6% haste, it's a 7.1 second cooldown. Throw a hammer that strikes an enemy for 1,157 holy damage, generates a holy power, and is, of course, only usable on enemies with less than 20% health or while you are in Avenging Wrath. So again, this is a really fun little gameplay aspect that alters your rotation in Avenging Wrath and in Execute, which is super, super cool. And it's great to have that baseline, so that's very positive. Now then, we also have a bunch of utility things coming as well baseline. The list goes on and on. First thing, I keep checking my notes to make sure I cover everything. First thing, Blessing of Sacrifice is now there for all Paladin specs, so that's really interesting. 2-minute cooldown. You bless a party or raid member, reducing their damage taken by 30%, but you suffer 75% of the damage prevented. So that's really nice to have for the Ret Paladin, an extra like defensive tool that you can use to support your teammates, and really emphasizing the sort of supportive and off-healing type role that a Ret Paladin can provide. Next up, we have a couple of less useful things. Do I have it on my bars, actually? You know what? I think I forgot to put it on my bars. I'm looking for Sense Undead. Sense Undead. Maybe it's not actually here. I had it in my notes, but maybe it's not actually here. Gonna be up here. Oh no, there it is. Sense Undead. It's in your minimap. There you go. I knew that was here somewhere, but Sense Undead is back. Okay, cool. So you can Sense Undead now, if you want to. Very Paladin thing. I'm surprised it's not in my spell book. I imagine that might be an error. Is it over here? Sorry. I should have checked this beforehand. My bad, everyone. No. Okay, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, it's over there. You can Sense Undead. That's back. Bit of flavor. Cool. Similarly, Turn Evil. I can't remember if this was there for Paladin before or not, but it's here now anyway. Whether it was in BFA, I don't remember now off the top of my head. But 15-second cooldown, 1.5 second cast, reduced by haste, 20-yard range. An undead, aberration, or demon target, you can fear them for up to 40 seconds, broken by damage. Only one target can be feared at a time. So that's kind of nice, you know. In certain dungeons, if there are undead enemies, that could potentially be useful. More so to interrupt casts, like fears are quite dangerous in dungeons because you risk pulling more mobs and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously nice to see, and it fits the Paladin theme. So that's part of the class fantasy thing they're bringing back. Next up, this one is an intriguing one, actually. Shield of the Righteous. This is now baseline for all Paladin specs as well. This works really smoothly for Holy Paladin, and obviously it's, you know, the core ability of Prot Paladin. For Ret, it's a bit more awkward. You're going to need a macro to use this one properly because, as you can see, Shield of the Righteous requires a shield. Costs 3 holy power. Slam enemies in front of you with your shield, causing 383 holy damage, increasing your armor by 1,615 for 4.5 seconds. Obviously, you know, you're going to be taking your two-handed weapon off, which is bad. And the damage is terrible. It might as well not exist. But this is certainly intriguing as some sort of potential, like, off-tanking type thing, right? Because you do have a taunt ability, right? So potentially in Mythic Plus, your tank goes down. You could potentially have this macroed up, and you could take over to tank for a little bit while you get a battle res on your tank. Perhaps in PvP, if you're being focused, this could be very strong. To give you some perspective, I have 615 armor right now, which is about 20% damage reduction, right? If I put on a shield, and let's put on a sword as well. You can see, like, for example, I can't use most of these abilities. Blade of Wrath and my other two Holy Spenders. But let me come in. Let me do a couple of Crusader strikes here. Okay. So with the shield, by default, I go up to 27% damage reduction. And with Shield of the Righteous, we go up to 50% damage reduction against physical attacks. So that's a very, very big deal, obviously, in terms of surviving. Again, I think particularly do some, like in Mythic Plus, it could have some usefulness, or in PvP could have some usefulness. So very intriguing one to have in there, right? Very intriguing. And then finally, Word of Glory. This one I think still needs some tuning. But Word of Glory costs 3 holy power. This is now baseline. Again, it's baseline for all paladin specs. 3 holy power, instant cast, 40-yard range, calls down the light to heal a friendly target for 2,266. Now, why I say this is probably undertuned is that Flash of Light heals for 2,300. So Flash of Light actually heals for more than Word of Glory, which does feel, it feels wrong. I'm going to be honest with you. It doesn't feel right. Word of Glory for Ret in BFA was a talent. You had 2 charges with about, I think it was like a 50-second recharge or something like that, like a long enough recharge. And it would heal you plus 2 other, or would not heal you, it would heal the target and 2 other targets nearby. So it would heal 3 people. And I think it healed for about twice as much as this did. So certainly for Ret Paladin right now, going away from having that on a, like, Word of Glory is the 2 charge, really chunky group heal, to being no charges but a very weak single target heal. I think tuning is still required here, but this could potentially be kind of nice to, again, fulfill some sort of supporting off-heal role whenever that's needed. So there you are. Maybe they could even alter it and bring back the charge system for Ret, which I would kind of enjoy myself. I think that was more fun. We shall see. Okay, then we also have not only all of these changes, we also have some talent changes as well. First of all, on the level 25 row, Empyrean Power, which was an Azerite trait, is now there as a new talent. Crusader Strike has a 15% chance to make your next Divine Storm free and do 25% additional damage. Let's see if we can proc it here while we go through these other things. So that's a very welcome addition. Very, very fun to see Empyrean Power come back. That's going to feel really good in AoE and Mythic Plus. Okay, next up, the level 40 row has really been mixed up a whole lot over here, okay? So Divine Purpose is there. Holy Power abilities have a chance to make your next Holy Power ability free and do 20% increased healing and damage. So that's now at level 40. Holy Avenger now is over here, and this is a reworked talent. A 3-minute cooldown, instant cast, your Holy Power generation is tripled for 20 seconds. So this is absolutely crazy. You're going to throw out so much burst damage with Holy Avenger. One of the concerns, obviously, let's say this works really well for the other Paladin specs in the sense that they can split up their cooldowns, because, you know, healers and defensive, like tanks, can split up their cooldowns to cover multiple events. Oh, there we go. I actually did proc Empyrean Power. Sorry, I hadn't noticed. With us, we probably want to sync this up with Avenging Wrath, and they don't quite sync up. You're going to have to delay this a little bit every time, so that is something just to be aware of. And then Seraphim is back again on this row as well, which is a Holy Power Spender with a 45-second cooldown that will give you... oh, I can't change it right now, but yeah, I mean, you've had this before. It's going to buff all your secondary stats. Like, our secondary stats by default are very low, so this could potentially be very good, particularly at the start of the expansion. And yeah, there you are. At level 45 then, we do have a new talent to replace Word of Glory, and that's Healing Hands, and I actually really like this one. When you lay on hands an ally at less than 30% health, the cooldown of lay on hands is reduced by 50%. Now, this is very cool when you combo it with Unbreakable Spirit, which is already reducing the cooldown of Lay on Hands alongside D-Shield and Shield of Vengeance by 30%. Sorry, Shield of Vengeance over here by 30%. The interesting thing about this is that Lay on Hands becomes a 7-minute cooldown, and if you proc Healing Hands, it's going to reduce that to a 3.5-minute cooldown. So that's amazing. I think especially in Mythic Plus, you know, let's say a Mythic Dungeon's about 30 minutes long. Now, realistically, instead of Lay on Hands being the default 10-minute cooldown, with this talent instead, it's going to be 3.5-minute cooldown. So in that 30-minute dungeon, I might get, you know, 5 or 6 easily off. You know, we're just kind of compensate for the fact that you're not going to be using it on cooldown. Like, the fights are not going to line up that way. But I could easily get multiple uses out of this in the dungeon, like save someone who's going to die, save a tank. And that's going to feel, I think, really, really good, actually. I think that's going to be super awesome and could be a really big reason, again, to bring a Ret Paladin to your dungeon, right? On top of providing flat damage reduction, also saving people quite frequently, on top of Blessing of Sacrifice and Blessing of Protection, all the rest. So that is very, very welcome. Then finally, the level 50 row has also been rejigged a bit. So Inquisition is still there, right? Inquisition is still there for flat. It's a Holy Power Spender. It gives you flat 7% damage and haste. So just a maintenance buff for flat constant benefit. Crusade is still there, replacing Avenging Wrath and essentially giving you that stacking haste and damage buff, which is a really fun thing to play with, right? just whatever, stack up the damage, feels good. And then Sanctified Wrath, this has been reworked. Avenging Wrath lasts 25% longer, and this now contains the Light's Decree as a right trait, where each holy power you spend causes you to explode with holy light for 186 damage to nearby enemies. So it is certainly weaker, but I mean, that's sort of where the level of 50 row leaves you. You've got Inquisition for constant damage, Sanctified Wrath, which is going to really pop off in AoE with all of those explosions, doing more damage in AoE, and then Crusade, which is going to feel like really good for that, you know, ramping up faster pace, and could be good for burst single target / AoE as well. So sort of interesting choices there on the whole, and a nice rework to the Holy Paladin talent tree. And honestly, sorry, Holy Paladin, the Ret Paladin talent tree, I honestly think it's really good. And I really like some of these options that they've brought in to fill in the slots of the cool abilities like Wake of Ashes and Hammer of Wrath coming baseline, like they should have been all along. So really good changes overall. Next up, we have the Paladin Legendaries. And for Red Paladin, there's some really good ones here. First of all, we have 4 generic Legendaries that are there for all Paladin specs. First up, we have this one, where Judgment has a 50% chance to reduce the cost of your next Holy Power spender by 1. Not that exciting, let's be honest, but it's there, you know, and you're going to change your rotation a little bit to compensate for that, so it's okay. This one is quite intriguing. Blessing of Dusk and Dawn. When you reach 5 Holy Power, you gain the Blessing of Dawn. When you reach 0 Holy Power, you gain the Blessing of Dusk. The Blessing of Dawn increases your damage and healing by 6% for 10 seconds, and the Blessing of Dusk increases, gives you 6% damage reduction for 10 seconds. So I certainly think as the Ret Paladin, we've got really good Holy Power generation and spending, so you're going to be able to maintain both of these relatively easily while you're playing. Let's see if we can proc one of them here. Okay, we'll do our Holy Power thing here. Okay, there we go. We've triggered the Blessing of Dusk. Will we be able to actually spend this, though? That's the question. I'm actually having a little bit of trouble here because of our procs. So this actually might push you. You can see, might push you away from things like Imperium Power and push you towards other things. So I can spend this. There we go. You're certainly going to want to bank your Holy Power a little bit more than you would before. But you're going to get relatively reasonable uptime on this, I think. Not the best uptime, but relatively reasonable. I certainly think the appeal of this for sure is going to be in Mythic Plus or in Progress, like in difficult fights. Also somewhat in PvP. Not only do you get the damage increase, which is good, but it's the damage taken reduced. That's really nice, I think. To just survive one-shot abilities. Like, we've seen the impact that Versatile stacking Corruptions has had on different specs at the end of BFA, letting them push higher Mythic Plus. So that damage reduction is going to be really good, I think. Then we have this Shadowgas Ring. Your Blessing of Freedom, Blessing of Sacrifice, and Blessing of Protection cooldowns are reduced by 1 second per Holy Power spent. This is going to be a really, definitely a PvP focused one. You know, I'm not sure you're going to use this as a Ret Paladin too much outside of PvP, but in PvP this could be really, really good. You know, just a lot more utility, a lot more support for your group, which is awesome. And then we have this one, Casting Avenging Wrath, or any Forbearance ability. So Forbearance abilities are obviously Blessing Protection, Lay on Hands, D-Shield, that sort of stuff. Will give you 5 Holy Power. So that's going to give you like a good chunk of extra burst. Again, I think particularly useful in PvP. And kind of just a nice overall option. But let's move on to the Ret Paladin specific stuff, because we have some really nice things here. First up, Returning. A returning trait on the Shadowgas Wasteguard right now. Project Divine Storm forward 20 yards, damaging all enemies in its path, and also increase damage dealt by Divine Storm by 20%. So, yeah, just to put it in perspective, like a normal Divine Storm looks like this. Oh, I also forgot to mention, Divine Storm has a target cap. 5 enemies. I forgot to mention that. But just so you know. Again, with this Legendary, boom! Divine Storm, off it goes. How cool is that? So I can shoot it at enemies. Really, really nice. Really interesting. Looks awesome. Really cool returning trait that Ret Paladins are going to be very happy about. Very happy about indeed. And like, despite the fact, and you know, just on top of that, 20% increased damage from Divine Storm in Mythic Plus. That's going to be a phenomenally powerful legendary in world questing. Anything like that. Any fight with AoE, this is our main source of AoE damage, so it's going to feel really good. Another very cool one is this. Which kind of harkens back to the was a Templar Final Verdict from Warlords of Draenor, which I remember using, right? Replaces Templar's Verdict with Final Verdict, a devastating strike that does holy damage. And it actually does the same amount of holy damage. It's the other effect that matters. Okay, so Final Verdict, the specific thing it does is it has a 50% chance to activate Hammer of Wrath and reset its cooldown, which is very, very cool. So again, it also has, check out this animation. This is super badass, right? This is our default Templar's Verdict. Bam, pretty cool. Okay, pretty cool. Let me go switch into this then. Leave combat, please. Please. There we go. Are you guys ready for this? You guys ready? Throw a judgment just so it looks cool. You ready? Boom! How badass is that? We can Hammer of Wrath now, which is really cool. So work that into our rotation. So it has the old hammer throw effect from the old version of Final Verdict, and it also has this really big beefy overhead swing to it. So I think this is phenomenal. Like, what a cool legendary. Plus also I love how it alters your rotation. This is going to be absolutely incredible in single target, and this is one of the most fun legendaries I've seen. Rotation altering also will still work in Execute and Avenging Wrath by giving you more Hammers of Wrath, which is awesome, and it just looks badass. So yeah, really, really like this one. Love these both so far. Super good. Okay, another one here is the Shadowgas Helm, and this could work really well with this one if they ever let us equip more than one legendary at once, right? So Hammer of Wrath will extend Avenging Wrath by 2 seconds and do 20% additional damage. Relatively straightforward. You know, just more damage, always nice. It's definitely going to work well, like with Crusade or Sanctified Wrath, either getting more out of those explosions, or of course getting more out of that maximum stacked Crusade. That's going to feel pretty good. So that's that one. Relatively straightforward. Just going to prioritize Hammer of Wrath very, very highly in Avenging Wrath, very simply. And then Shadowgas Greaves here, our final one. Relatively straightforward here, where spending Holy Power grants you 20 haste per Holy Power spent for 12 seconds, stacking up to 20 times. This is going to potentially be really good at the start of the expansion. Yeah, like I've got 200 haste at this, like just, I presume this is just questing gear, right? 200 haste. This can give me up to 400 haste, which is a whole ton. So, I mean, like, just to give you perspective, one nice thing you could do, with Inquisition giving you 7% haste, and with this giving me more haste, like my rotation, like this is my default little rotation speed here. Let's go mix it up then. Let's throw this on. Let's see how fast we can get, just for funsies. All right, we can drop combat. There we go. Okay, let's horse back in. All right, so we're gonna start. I should have actually started with Inquisition. My bad. My bad. Not used to Inquisition. So we got Inquisition up now, and we're stacking our Relentless Inquisitor, which is very cool. One downside with Relentless Inquisitor, of course, is that you're going to want to make sure that you're chain pulling quite a bit. Like if there's ever downtime in a fight, anything like that, it's definitely gonna hurt. Like, let's go Avenging Wrath here. Why the hell not? Spend some of our abilities. Wake of Ashes in there. Let's go. We're up to the 20 thing right now. You can see we're rolling in the haste right now. Very awesome. So you're gonna have a much faster paced spec just by default if that's something that you're interested in, which I think is cool. So yeah, there you go. I think, in fact, yeah, look at this. While we are stacked up here, we actually go up to 27% haste, up from the baseline, what was it, of 6 haste? So we're getting a lot more haste, a much faster rotation with this legendary. So yeah, for me, the legendaries for Ret Paladin are probably some of the best legendaries I've seen just across the board. They are so, so good. So big thumbs up on the Ret legendaries from me. Really fun and really unique. Let's go check out the conduit. Okay, so for our conduits, your conduits will slot into your soulbinds like this. If I show you an empty tree, for example, you have finesse conduits, which are utility, potency, which are essentially damage and healing, and endurance conduits, which give you survivability. So let's check out the ones we have here for Paladin. So, first of all, endurance conduits. We have 3 right now. I imagine a 4th one should be coming. Consecration heals you for 50% of Consecration's damage every second while standing within it. This is terrible. Consecration does no damage, so it sucks. Divine Call. Divine Shield's cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds when you take damage. This effect can only trigger once every 30 seconds. So this is phenomenal, actually, I think. Like, let's say Divine Shield has a 3.5 minute cooldown. So let's say we get 10 procs of this. Like that's 50 seconds. Sorry, not 10 procs. I'm an idiot. Six procs. Duh. Let's say 6 procs, roughly speaking. That's going to be 30 seconds off. So it'll essentially bring Divine Shield from a 3.5 minute down to about a 3-minute cooldown. If we're taking damage consistently. So that's quite damn cool, I think. That's actually really good. And then Shielding Words. Word of Glory applies Absorb Shield that lasts 15 seconds for 15% healing on the Paladin when used. This one, like, because Word of Glory is not healing for that much, this one, again, is underwhelming. So one really good, really good conduit here for Ret Paladin right now, and the other ones seem a bit weak. Could do with some tuning, I think. Then for Finesse, we have 4. Echoing Blessings. This one's really cool. After it ends, Blessing of Freedom increases the target's movement speed by 15% for 15 seconds. After Blessing of Protection or Blessing of Sacrifice ends, the target takes 15% less damage for 15 seconds. So this is phenomenal. This is so good. Number 1, turning Blessing of Freedom into, essentially, we could just use it for personal movement speed. 15% personal movement speed for 15 seconds on a 25-second cooldown. That's going to be so good in Mythic Plus or in any raid fights with lots of mobility. Like, whenever you're not relying on the movement impairing effect removal, this is just going to be great for extra mobility. So even that alone makes this good. But then on top of that, Blessing of Protection and Blessing of Sacrifice giving 15% damage reduction for 15 seconds. That is so good for so many situations. It's going to really help, it's going to help save tanks. It's going to help save everybody in your party. It's an absolutely massive effect to help people stay alive during dangerous circumstances. So this is just unbelievably powerful. So what a conduit for Ret Paladin. Super good. Another great one, Light's Barding. Divine Steed's durations increased by 50%, so from 3 seconds of speed up to 4.5 seconds of speed. We'll take it. Every little helps, right? So also kind of nice. This one should also scale up hopefully pretty well. Maybe we'll get like double duration Divine Steeds out, which would be good. We'll see. Stalwart as a Crusader. Crusader aura reduces all allies' fear duration by 30%. It seems like more of a PvP thing, and it's, I don't know. It's a bit wonky, This one's a bit wonky. Maybe there's some really niche circumstances where this works. Where, like, maybe you've got 4 paladins or something and nobody's planning on dying. So you're like, well, we already have Concentration Aura and Devotion Aura. Well, might as well get some fear reduction. I mean, it's something. But I'm more interested in this and the fact that they might add more conduits that buff up our auras in different ways. So we'll see. And then finally, Wrench Evil. Turn Evil's cast time is reduced by 50% and its range is increased by 50 yards. So really ridiculous range. I don't know what you'd ever use that range for, but it is there. I mean, cooldown reduction is okay. I don't know. Or the cast time reduction's okay. I'm not really seeing this, to be honest with you. Like, you're going for Echoing Blessings, and then you're maybe going to grab Light's Barding if you got multiple Finesse conduits. But definitely, this one stands head and shoulders above the others, for sure. And then we have... where are they? We've got 4 Ret Paladin specific potency conduits. Light's Reach, this one's really nice. Blade of Justice, Justice's range is increased by 20 yards and it does 20% more damage. So this is great. Brings it from 12 yards up to 32. That's phenomenal. It just gives you something to do whenever you have to move out of range of the boss. Like, instead of just throwing Judgment and maybe throwing Hammer of Wrath if you're able to and execute, and then feeling kind of bad, feeling like, I've got to go out to soak this or drop this outside of the fight, or get in Mythic Plus where you're running between packs and obviously you're a really slow Ret Paladin, so your team is typically pulling before you quite get there. This gives you an extra button. You can throw out those Blade of Wraths more frequently to keep that holy power flowing. So that feels really good. I'm really happy with that one. Virtuous Command. This one's intriguing. Judgment grants you Seal of Command for 4 seconds, granting your Templar's Verdict, Crusader Strike, Blade of Justice, and Weapon Attack a 10% chance of dealing 10% additional holy damage. I mean, overall, that's like 1% additional holy damage, like, averaged out on those, which is very, very small. It's quite minuscule, and unfortunately, there's no visual effect to this. But yeah, I mean, when this scales up, it's an extra reason to press Judgment and work that into the rotation. So that's kind of nice, I suppose. It's a bit of a weird one. It's kind of fun to have Seal of Command come back. It's just a pity it doesn't have that classic animation in there quite yet. Then we have Templar's Vindication. Templar's Verdict has a 15% chance to strike again for 15% of its damage. So again, like right now, it's maybe like a one and a bit percentage damage increase. That's certainly going to be good for, some single target funneling. You stick it with Righteous Verdict, maybe like the cloak as well, and that could work out pretty well. Relatively straightforward though. And then a very nice one as well, Truth's Wake. Wake of Ashes burns the target for an additional 10% damage over 6 seconds. So this is going to be a lot of burst AoE damage. Wake of Ashes is already hitting really hard. And to put it in perspective, like this Conduit alone, like does as much damage as a full Consecration does, which is like a GCD plus enemies standing in it for basically like 10 seconds straight, you know. So that's quite a nice little buff there, for sure. And there you go, guys. There are the Conduits for Paladin. I mean, the Conduits are typically relatively small things, which do slight things to alter your gameplay style. And some of the specs we've looked at already, they don't really do anything almost at all to alter your gameplay style. So I think the Ret Paladin, it's obviously this is the first iteration of these, but honestly, I think they look really good. All right, let's check out the Covenant abilities as well for the Ret Paladin. Every Covenant has a signature ability and then a Covenant class ability. The signature one for the Kyrians, which we'll start off with here, of course, is Summon Steward. The Still guy comes over, he has some extra effects he can do, and you get the Phial of Serenity, which is kind of like an extra health stone. But this extra health stone only heals you for 15% health, but it does remove all diseases, poisons, curses, and bleeds affecting you. I would say, generally speaking, for the Paladin, it's kind of the opposite of the Demon Hunter. The last class I looked at were the Demon Hunter specs, and for those, because those specs are so mobile, I felt like the mobility signature effects were really weak for them, and the survivability ones are very strong. For the Paladin, I think you've got a greater motivation to take the mobility signature ones. But I mean, Phial of Serenity, when it's good, is going to be really damn good. Now, fun one here. This is our Covenant class ability for Paladins. It's Divine Toll, 1 minute cooldown, instant cast. Instantly cast Holy Shock, Avenger Shield, or Judgment on up to 5 targets within 30 yards based on your current specialization. So if we'll cast it here beside these guys. In fact, it probably won't hit them all. Oh no, it did mostly hit them all. It threw one over there. You can see it's a little bit wonky, so I'm not sure exactly how it's working or not. We have 5 enemies here, possibly because we weren't in combat with them. It hit 3 of them, then it hit this guy over there. It didn't hit this one behind us, so perhaps a little bit wonky in terms of some of that combat stuff, but I mean, very simple, very straightforward. In AoE, I mean, Judgment hits for around about 900 damage. Actually, it's been buffed by this. Hang on. Hits for about, yeah, still about 900 damage, right? Holy damage, not reduced by armor. So this hits in an AoE. It's going to hit 5 targets. Number one, that's going to hit pretty hard. You know, that's about 4,500 damage. So it's equal to, you know, several Divine Storms, about 3 or so Divine Storms, maybe 3 or 4 Divine Storms even. So it's a pretty big deal of burst damage. And of course, the Judgment effect increases the damage your next Holy Power ability does against those targets by 25%. So it's a good burst cooldown on a short 1 minute cooldown. The downside of this is that in single target, it's obviously pretty underwhelming. In single target, this is essentially an extra Judgment on a 1 minute cooldown, so that's not fantastic by any means at all. It's going to feel pretty bad, but it feels great. It's going to feel decent in 2 target, and the more targets you add to this, up to 5, is going to feel better and better and better. And obviously, it's going to sync up with your wings every second time as well, so you're going to go into your wings with every second wings with a really big blast cooldown. One thing to quickly note, which I haven't done with other specs so far, but it is worth noting here. It's actually bugged out slightly, but that's okay. Combat Meditation with Pelagos. Divine Toll increases your mastery by 5% for 20 seconds, and then it's dropping out those globes I can pick up, right? So let's actually see if we can get it to hit all of these guys. Let's hit him with, right, let's hit him with this. Okay, it got even wonkier there. It hit those 2 guys and not these 3. So, yeah, it's gonna hit random stuff. At least it hit 5 things there, though, so that's good. That's an improvement. We can consume the Judgment effect. But yeah, it drops out these. But that makes it more appealing in single target for sure. You know, 5% mastery isn't terrible, right? That's going to help all of your single target damage. You pop this, even in single target, you pop this before you go into wings. And you're going to have that mastery for all of your wings, which is nice. There is also a Conduit for this one, which is currently bugged. You might notice I was testing it. I wanted to see what this would do in the dungeon testing I did for this video. And it's hilarious. What this actually does is bugged right now. It actually just makes your Divine Toll only hit 1 enemy always, which is hilariously bad. But it's supposed to give it a 30% chance, and that will increase to cast twice on any given target. This is quite fun because obviously this will make it much more effective against lesser enemies. So like 1, 2, or 3 enemies, that bonus chance to hit is going to be much better. against one enemy, there's going to be a good chance that you will get 2 holy power out of it. Makes it more like a blade of justice than a judgment. So yeah, or kind of makes it the best of both worlds. So yeah, pretty cool there. This is a really good one. It feels super fun. It's great for all the paladin specs. It really stands out in AoE. Next up, we have the Venthyr, truly the oddest one. The oddest one. Oh, look at this guy doing his ranged paladin stuff. What a legend. Using those ranged abilities. I love it. Sorry, got distracted. The signature ability for the Venthyr is Door of Shadows. This one's really, really good for Paladin. Really good for Paladin. 1 minute cooldown, 1.5 second cast, 35-yard range. And it's a teleport. Went through the shadows, appear at the target location. So, pick your position. I want to go up here on this mountain. Door of Shadows over. Ta-da, I'm there. So, yeah, really, really nice. You know, Ret Paladin, it's a wheelchair. So, any extra movement is going to feel really good. Now, this is where things get weird. Ashen Hallow is really, really weird. Okay, this is their Venthyr class ability for Paladin. It has a 4-minute cooldown, which is an absolute whopper of a cooldown. It does have a bit of a cast time, a 30-yard range. You can put it down. You can see it's absolutely massive, massive area that's going to go down in. I'll show you the visual effect in a second. Let me just explain what it's going to do. First, you hallow the target area for 30 seconds. Every 1.9 seconds, that's reduced by haste, it's like default 2 seconds. An enemy in the area suffers 700 shadow damage, and an ally in the area is healed for 1,200. Within the hallow, you may use Hammer of Wrath on any target. Okay, so again, just so you know what's going on before I put this down. Alright, this is actually, although it's a big AoE, it is actually single target. Right, every time it ticks, it's going to hit one person, one enemy in that area, and it's going to hit one ally in that area. So if I put it down, you actually see the visual is amazing. The cast time is also cool. Look at that. So it's going to hit that guy this time. Oh, I hit him. Now I hit him. It's also healing me. You can see the procs for the heal on me. Hitting him. Crit him. And it's going to let me use my hammer on any of these guys whenever I want. Right? A couple of things about this one. Oh, also let me point this out right now, actually, before I forget. There is a conduit for this as well. Ashen Hallow will strike the lowest health ally and the lowest health enemy within it for 10% of its effect. So it's going to give it, again, once this scales up, it's going to give it some 2-target cleave benefits as well, which is going to be quite nice. But this is a weird one. I feel like this one could be pretty good for the other Paladin specs. I feel like for Ret, this is quite underwhelming. Okay, here's the thing. So number one, you're probably thinking 4-minute cooldown. Well, hey, that does sync up with every second Avenging Wrath, but here's the problem. Here's the problem. One of the big benefits of Ashen Hallow is that it enables you to use your Hammer of Wrath on any target. Problem is, Wings is already allowing you to use Hammer of Wrath on any target. That's part of the benefit of going into Wings. So you've got a real clash between those two, where you're really not going to want to actually stack Ashen Hallow with Wings at all. You're going to want to be using them really separately to get more Hammer of Wrath uptime, which is quite bizarre. Also, as you can see, just from those just from the numbers here, the healing that it's going to do is significantly higher than the damage it's going to do. So when you compare it to, I mean, we just looked at the Kyrian ability. The Kyrian ability basically just gives you damage. I mean, it could give you healing if you use Word of Glory, right? But you know, it's basically just giving you damage. This one, yes, it's giving you damage, but it's also giving you a lot of healing. So in terms of pure DPS, this is likely to fall quite far behind. So that is something to, something to be aware of. Obviously, the good news, because it is actually like, although it looks visually like an AoE, it is single target, so it's going to be just as good in single target, really, as it is in AoE. But it's a weird one. I feel like this is wonky. I don't know. Let me know what you think about this one. For me, I think it's actually quite off-putting. I don't like the look of this too much at all. It's going to be really good for some solo content, against a boss. You slap it down, it's going to do good damage to that boss. It's going to do good healing to you. It's going to be great for that, but in dungeons and raids, not so keen on it myself. Okay, let's take a look now at the Necrolords, which is the exact polar opposite of the Venthyr. Alright, the signature ability with the Necrolords is Fleshcraft. It's a 2-minute cooldown, 4-second channel. You form a shield equal to up to 20% of your maximum health, and the shield lasts for 2 minutes. And when you channel the shield near corpses, it will absorb the power of the corpses, make the shield more powerful. It can go up to 50% of your maximum health. So situationally, a very powerful defensive. Like I said before, I mean, for Paladin in particular, this does feel a little bit awkward in the sense that, like, let's say, for example, on my Demon Hunter, on a Havoc Demon Hunter, I'd feel very good using this, you know, like we kill a Mythic Plus pack, channel up the big shield, and then I dash back over to the group and I join them for the next pack, and we're good. I don't really lose any uptime, and I've got a big shield to really take some pressure off my healer. Really good stuff. For the Paladin, though, you know, if you stop to channel this shield, it can be difficult simply to catch up to your group because you are such a slow class. So that is something to be aware of in that situation. The Covenant-specific ability for the Paladins is Vanquisher's Hammer. This has a 30-second cooldown, 30-yard range, and it does have a 1 holy power cost. So bear that in mind. It throws a hammer at your target doing 580 shadow damage. So, I mean, it's not quite as strong as a Judgment, for example. It's a little bit. And then it will empower your next Templar's Verdict to automatically trigger a Divine Storm. So you essentially get your 2 spenders for free, right? So your Templar's Verdict, which is normally doing 1,800, will get a bonus 1,300 damage on top of it. And obviously that will work in AoE. Or another way to think about it in AoE is you'd be doing Divine Storm anyway. Now you're going to get some single target funnel damage through a Templar's Verdict as well. So yeah, this one's a weird one. Okay, we can throw it out here. All right, there we go, and boom, boom. We pop our attack, and it goes off. Let's see if we can get a visual on the actual Vanquisher's Hammer as well. So this is obviously, you know, it's every 30 seconds, and the fact that it costs a holy power is quite weird, I think. So we'll see if that actually goes live, if that lasts. Yeah, I mean, it's relatively straightforward. There's nothing really too flashy, too interesting about this. You're just going to be weaving this constantly into your rotation every 30 seconds. Like I said, compared to the Venthyr, there's the hammer itself. Bonk. Parried. Compared to the hammer itself, the Venthyr, with the Venthyr being the big 4-minute cooldown, that's really kind of out of the core of your rotation. This one is really part of the core of your rotation. So if you enjoy that, you might enjoy Vanquisher's Hammer, a new button to press very frequently. For me, again, it does feel rather weak, rather underwhelming. It doesn't feel anywhere near as good to press, I think, as Kyrian Toll, especially considering that it does have that holy power component. I'm not a big fan of that myself, considering that none of the other abilities have that. So yeah, there you go. That's Vanquisher's Hammer. For me, a little underwhelming, but I can see some of the appeal, though, as well. All right, and finally, we have pretty much always the most controversial Covenant here, I think, anyway, which is the Night Fae. So their signature ability is cool, and it did just get buffed in this current beta build. So it's a 1.5-minute cooldown instant cast, turn into a Vulpin, teleporting 15 yards forward and increasing your movement speed by 50%. And you can reactivate Soul Shape every few seconds to teleport again. It lasts 12 seconds or indefinitely in a rest area. So here you go. You can see we're zooming along. Very cool. And we can blink. This is phenomenal for Paladin. Like, this is so good. Like, one of my most facepalm memories from this tier, because obviously I play a Paladin alt for fun, is doing doing Mythic Plus and doing workshop keys in Mythic Plus, Mechagon Workshop. And you know the bit where you've got to run along the big sort of assembly line treadmill type thing after the dog boss? That part is hilariously bad. Like, your Demon Hunter kind of just jumps up and dashes across and he's away, and your tank is dashing off and they're away, and you as the Paladin, you just sort of slowly run along this treadmill, and like they get to the next pack and they want to start pulling the next pack, and you're 30 seconds behind. It's really embarrassing. So some sort of bigger mobility thing like this, I think, is super welcome for the Paladin. So that's a very big plus. Soul Shape is fantastic. Now, here's where things get controversial, though. This is the Blessing of Seasons. And the way this works is that you have four different blessings: summer, autumn, winter, spring. You might have heard of these things before. It's a 30-second cooldown, instant cast, 40-yard range, and you put this on one ally and it lasts for 30 seconds. So, I mean, generally speaking, it just means that you want to press this button every 30 seconds and you're just choosing who to put which benefit on. The first one we have is Blessing of Summer. Bless an ally for 30 seconds, causing their attacks to have a 40% chance to deal 30% additional damage as holy. And they each have a pretty cool effect. So, relatively straightforward. You know, you're going to be hitting, and there you go. You can see the proc there. These little extra procs doing 30% extra damage whenever they pop off. He got parried there. Yeah, you can see again right there. Roughly speaking, like, you do the maths, the quick maths on it, 40%. Doing 30% additional damage, like 30 divided by 5 is 6, multiplied by 2 is 12. So, roughly speaking, on average, you're going to be doing 12% more damage as holy damage, which is definitely nice. The next one then is Blessing of Autumn. Bless an ally for 30 seconds, causing their cooldowns to recover 50% faster. So that's kind of insane. So let's actually, let's pop Wings. Let's pop Blessing of Autumn, and let's see where we end up after this. There is also, by the way, a conduit here, which is called Prolonged Autumn, which makes Blessing of Autumn last 30% longer. They may add more potency conduits that affect more of these. We shall see. I mean, one fun thing here is you can see that it actually affects itself, right? It affects itself, which is kind of fun. So you can actually move into the next one quicker. Though, again, that being said, it does appear that Autumn is the best one, so I don't know if you would want to. And there you go. Once it expires, you can see that in that 30 seconds, we got about 50 seconds of cooldown reduction on Avenging Wrath, which is really nice. And that's going to be very potent on basically every ally. Like, there's so many specs, there's so many classes, which are cooldown based, of course, and are going to love that effect. You know, whether it be, well, we want our healer to have their healing cooldowns more on this fight. It could be absolutely massive. It's obviously good in TPS. They're going to do more damage. It could make your, like, let's say there's ad packs spawning in. It could make your Avenging Wrath sync up more, and so on. There is something of a concern, I would say, balance-wise. Let me actually just let me show you Blessing of Winter first, then we'll talk. Blessing of Winter is quite simple. Bless an ally for 30 seconds. Their attacks do 50 frost damage, reduce enemies' movement speed by 3%, and attack speed by 1%, stacking up to 3 times. So definitely a very good use in PvP, and also going to be fairly somewhat useful in Mythic Plus as well. Like, especially, you know, when you have more haste as the Paladin and you're hitting stuff more, or you have a fast-hitting character like, you know, an Outlaw Rogue or something in your group, that's going to be pretty good to get, you know, some damage reduction on the, a little bit of damage reduction and an extra ability to kite on tough mobs in Mythic Plus, or in PvP, of course. So that's Blessing of Winter. The concern here is, of course, like with Blessing of Autumn, just to finish that thought before you look at this final one, there's clearly a concern about stacking these cooldowns, right? What if you have 4 paladins in the group and they just cycle their Blessing of Autumn on one particular person? That particular person is going to have essentially a permanent 50% cooldown reduction on them, which is kind of insane. So they've already changed this a few times. It used to be party-wide. In my opinion, definitely Autumn. There's some question marks there in terms of some of the stuff being a bit too powerful. But yeah, we shall see. The final one, though, is Blessing of Spring. Increases an ally's healing done by 10% and their healing received by 20%. So, you know, you're going to slap this on one of your healers, most likely. Not going to be much use at all in single player, of course, but you're going to slap it on your healer in Mythic Plus or one of your healers in the raid. They do 10% more healing, get 20% more. Very, very welcome. So, I mean, let's be real. The Night Fae Covenant is looking extremely powerful. These different blessings are very, very good, right? You're going to be slapping probably summer, arguably winter on yourself. You know, just whatever, up your damage by a relatively flat amount during those periods. Autumn is really a choice, I would say, whether you put it on yourself for a lot more damage or you put it on an ally. And then spring is one that you're going to be putting on your healer. So I do have to say, I really like the blessing type gameplay, and like choosing who to put it on is a very cool idea. I love that utility aspect. The concern, of course, is a concern around balance, because some of these things, like Autumn in particular, seem just incredibly strong, at least on paper. When we sit down, we actually do the maths on it and work it out. Maybe it will turn out that it's not quite that strong, but right now they do seem extremely powerful. So there is something of a fear that this might end up being somewhat mandatory for a paladin. We shall see. I mean, it's not the worst thing to be mandatory if it was. I'm going to be honest with you. Soul Shape is fantastic. And these things, I think, are actually pretty fun to be blessing different people. I think that's quite nice. And it fits with the Paladin sort of theme. So there's worse things that could happen for sure. Like if the Venthyr one was the best, you might feel a bit bad. But there you go. Those are the Covenant abilities for the Ret Paladin. All right, guys. And those are all the different pieces of the Retribution Paladin on Shadowlands. As you can tell, I've been super positive for pretty much all of this video. Apart from a couple of bits, we know with the Covenant abilities. But generally speaking, if you're a Ret Paladin or just a Paladin in general, you're going to be super happy, I think, with Shadowlands. The changes, the new abilities that we're getting are just so damn good. It just really, really enhances the class, in my opinion. From baseline changes like Wake of Ashes and Hammer of Wrath being baseline, to really emphasizing the utility aspect of the Ret Paladin with Blessing of Sacrifice now there alongside, you know, the new talented, improved healing hands, lay on hands, blessing and protection, the auras that you're going to bring. Like, wow, it's just fantastic. You know, you're really going to feel when you join a Mythic Plus group, for example, like you're really going to feel like you are bringing a lot of substantial utility, and that there's going to be a massive difference between a group with a Ret Paladin versus a group without a Ret Paladin. So I think that those are really positive changes. There is a little bit of a concern, perhaps, you know, how the Paladin utility stuff will stack up a little bit when you've got, in the raid situation, when you already have Holy Paladins and Protection Paladins, two specs which are both looking extremely good as well. So, you know, and they've typically been more successful overall, I would say, than Ret Paladin. Of course, that being said, you know, Ret Paladin has been kind of a sleeper hit in the sense that, well, there's been at least, like, you know, I think there's been one Ret Paladin has snuck into, you know, most world first kills in the last expansion in Mythic. So, you know, it's been up there. It's been up there for sure. You know, quiet. There's not been too many of them, but they have been there. So that is something to note. But yeah, I just think it seems great. A lot of interesting and fun Covenant abilities as well. Admittedly, there is the concern with Night Fae that it could be a little bit too strong. We'll have to see with that one. And then, you know, for me personally, I felt like the Venthyr and the Necrolord ones were a little bit bland, a little bit too uninteresting. Although I do feel like you've got very fun options with the Night Fae and with the Kyrian. So that's definitely a positive effect. On top of what are a very, very nice set of Conduit abilities and a very nice set of Legendaries. So yeah, big improvements to baseline kit, big improvements to the talent tree, lots more additional utility abilities, really good Legendaries, great Conduits, and a couple, at least, of very good Covenant abilities. It's a very good time to be a Ret Paladin. You're BFA, but better. Losing out, of course, on like Avenger's Might and what was it called? Light's Decree stacking, which I think is honestly a good thing. You know, that made you a god in Wings and then terrible outside of Wings. I think having a more reasonable damage profile, where Wings is, of course, still a big burst of damage, but it's not the one defining thing about your class. That's an improvement too from BFA. So I'm not actually sad about anything that we're losing in particular. So yeah, big thumbs up for me. Ret Paladin, it's a winner. Congrats, guys. Okay, I'll check back the next couple of days. We'll see the other two Paladin specs. Sneak preview. They're also both very good. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.